And I had connections with the department, and I thought that Ian had been there at that meeting. I had a feeling that, you know, it was Warwick department, he's a mathematician, he's probably there. And I've been given the job of writing the cell biology chapter, the first chapter for a book about this thick on obstetrics and gynecology. And they needed to start with cell biology, because you always do, you know. It's like learning to write and things. You have to go into cell biology. And I did this. It was paid quite well. I just left the University of Birmingham because the department was corrupt and there was a lot of fuss. I'd been there for 30 years, and I'd left under a cloud, but a rather golden cloud. It was all right. And I was working in a test tube baby clinic, and as one does, yes. And this opportunity came to write this cell biology chapter. I wrote it, and then I put down a diagram of all the cell reactions. And I thought, this doesn't work. If it's a computer program, you have to do everything before you can do anything. All right? And it was so crazy that I thought, I'm reading Does God Play Dice? I'll ring Ian Stewart and see if he can help. And he said, why the bloody hell should I help you as a biologist or something? You biologists have got your own troubles. Leave us alone. And I said, you said something like that.
I probably said something a bit.
Yes, a bit acerbic anyway. And I said, weren't you one of the people I taught boomerangs to in 1974? And he said, no, but if you're that Jack Cohen, I'm interested, or something. He said, come tomorrow, we'll have lunch at the Coventry Cross pub, and I'll meet you at 12. So we started lunch about 12:10. We finished at about 6 o'clock, having absolutely found that our view of life meshed in a way which was unbelievable for a biologist and a mathematician. And we wrote our first paper, in fact, that afternoon pretty well.
Well, yes, we had a discussion that eventually turned into
a paper. Yeah. And then a book.
Yeah, and we carried on meeting up about once a week.
In pubs.
In pubs. Yeah. I drive.
England.
Jack lived near Bromsgrove at that point. He had 5 acres of land and a couple of llamas and a donkey and some sheep.
And lots of snakes.
Yeah, and
quite a lot of fish.
You fed polo mints to the sheep, and I thought that feeding mint to the sheep was quite
a way of getting
it
inside. You know,
it's a shortcut.
Yeah, that's right. But anyway, so after about 4 years of meeting up like that, maybe slightly less than that, we had lots and lots of really good pub discussions, and we thought, hang on, there's a book in this. If we just write up what we've been talking about.
And we wrote, it became Klatsch of Chaos, which was one of the first books to start the complexity movement. And it was reissued by Penguin in the most horrible possible cover, bright yellow. The only word you can read on the cover is Terry Pratchett. So it does have connection with Discworld.
Yes, it has a quote from Terry about the most interesting book he'd read all year or something.
Something like that, yes.
But that's in grey lettering.
On a
and
yellow
everything else
back.
is bright yellow and white.
It absolutely.
Yes, you can't see. I mean, you know,
This was a reissue of a book that had been very
name.
successful.
Yeah.
It was republished with Blind Watchmaker, a few other really good books.
Something like 12 of their popular science books, all in new editions, new covers, and everyone else's cover was absolutely fantastic, and
ours was absolutely shitty.
Rubbish. And we told them that when we saw the draft cover. We said, that's not going to work. I said, I had a book which had my name in white lettering on a yellow spine, and people can't read it.
That's right.
their eyes flick along the shelves in the bookstore and they go straight over it.
Yeah.
I always had a packet mix for something, and it was in white lettering on the yellow front. And not only that, but the print was about 1 millimetre tall.
Right.
Yeah.
In shops, the lighting is often
This is-
very yellow, which
This is
just
because
obscures it more.
a lot of the design work is done by young people. My wife's always
Like
complaining
about
about this.
3 years old.
You buy a magazine and the article's
just
written
the
in
mental
brown
age.
ink on black background,
Yeah.
or or purple ink on orange background, or whatever. And yes, if your eyesight is good, you can read it. But if you're 40 plus, and particularly if you're 60 plus, the letters are too small and the colours are all wrong. Yes.
This is before they've learnt about accessible fonts and colouring and everything.
That's
isn't
right.
it?
Yeah.
Or they just have an orangutan somewhere changing the fonts on everything, and then whatever comes up, that's what's published.
One of the good things about electronic publishing is that, at least in principle and to some extent in practice, you can redesign the fonts and everything else to suit yourself. And
Yes.
nice feature of the Kindle is just that if you want larger lettering, you can have it.
So it wasn't that you were opposed to interdisciplinary studies, it's just you were suspicious of them.
I don't know quite. Yeah, I ended up running the interdisciplinary mathematical research program, as we called it, for about 7 or 8 years, which was explicitly set up to encourage interdisciplinary studies. But that was after I'd met Jack.
Yeah. But meanwhile, he had previously been writing a series of stories, which are now collected, about jokes, Jack of all trades, for analogue science fiction. So he was prepared.
Yeah, I
doing
was.
disciplinary studies.
There was sort
in a
of
big way.
pre-pattern laid down already. It just had to be realised. I think that's right.
Do you find that it helps that you get on really well and have a good core understanding of values and stuff?
I think so. Although it was. We reckon we did the most creative stuff in some respects when we spent all our time arguing with each other and disagreeing.
Indeed, that's so.
Yeah.
And we still do this to some extent.
We
But unfortunately, we've ironed over most of the differences, and it takes quite some work to produce a real disagreement.
So this might be a blatantly obvious answer to somebody else, but what made you do the Science Discworld books? And
Okay.
what brought you there?
Jack had known Terry since before Terry was famous because of science fiction fandom. Is that fair enough?
It's fair enough, but there was one event particularly that did this. We can talk about it later if you want.
Okay. And then after Jack had made contact with me, now I read a lot of science fiction books. I think we've got 8,000 science fiction books and magazines in the house.
He reads a lot. And we're all read.
Yeah,
I
and
thought my other half had a big collection.
I collect them. But on the whole, I wasn't the kind of convention animal. Jack was more of a convention animal. So Jack.
Well, why I was a convention animal, if I may say, is that I had a series of books, science fiction books, on my shelf when I was a zoology lecturer in Birmingham. Books like Stranger in Strange Land and so on, that I would lend to my tutorial students. And I was shocked by a guy who was a technician in the department, who later became, I can't remember his name, Edgerton or something, very famous science fiction organiser. And he shocked me to Peter Weston. Peter Weston was a guy in Birmingham who'd just written a big thing about Heinlein and so on. And he turned up in my room on one occasion and said, "You're going to have to come to a conference, to a convention." I said, "Oh, convention, what's that?" And he said, "Well, there's one going on at the moment in London, and James Blish." I said, "James Blish?" He said, "James Blish is talking." I said, "I'm going down to London tomorrow. I can actually walk in on it." He said, "Yes, you can." And in 1971, he said, "We're having a meeting in Worcester, and we're having all the American authors over." Well. That was about 1968 or 69. I went down to London and sat down next to this very pretty woman in the audience with Jim talking. I said, "Who are you?" And she said, "I'm Judy Blish." And Jim and Judy Blish became our best friends for the next 12 years. And we go on holiday with them and everything. So I got well into all these conventions and things, but Ian hadn't done any of that.
No, I missed out on the sort of social side of science fiction. So Jack said, "Oh, DWcon's on, just down the road." You know, it was about a mile from here. It was in the Birmingham Airport Hotel.
Oh yes.
Which is now, it's still a hotel, but it's the one by the main road.
Yeah.
And so Jack said, "Well, come along."